Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of the Articulate Fly, and we're back with another Steelhead Alley Outfitters fishing report with Patrick Robinson. How you doing, Patrick?
I'm doing great, Marvin. Good to be back with you this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And how did your trip go with our friends at Norvise?
It went really well. Tim always brings up a great group of clients, and no matter what the conditions are, we always manage to get it done with them. And a lot of times trips people gauge them differently. It was good, it was bad, but clients oftentimes really dictate whether a trip's going to be good or bad or not. And Tim always brings a good group of guys who have good heads on their shoulders, and we got a lot of good fish under tough conditions. And it was another great Norvise trip. And so thanks to Tim and Tyler and the whole crew over at Norvise for coming back up and helping us show some other folks a good time.
Well, that's awesome. And also just to give them a shout out and thank them for sponsoring this fishing report. And, folks, if you're not familiar with the Norvise system, first of all, it's a great company, great family-owned business with Tim and Tyler and Michelle. Everything's made in the United States. And if you are interested in rotary tying, it is the only vise that truly spins. And to check out the vise and see what's going on with Norvise, the best place to go is www.nor-vice.com. And now that we've gotten the trip update, Patrick, looks like your weather is maybe a little bit warmer than normal, but it looks like you got some rain showers coming. So I imagine things are still looking pretty good on Steelhead Alley.
Yeah, we've been getting, Steelhead Alley, I think I've probably said in past reports, we're kind of known as being a flashy area. Our streams constantly up and down and up and down. And this year we started out low water. And the cool thing is we just, and I'm afraid to say this out loud for fear that it will change, but we keep getting these small little rain events that are coming in. They're dropping a quarter of an inch, third of an inch, something like that. And when the water is already, at lower levels, that's exactly what you want, because it doesn't blow everything out. It just gives you that perfect push. And that's really what we've been having lately. And yeah, we just came through a very unseasonably warm spell. In fact, the boys from Norvise got to experience that on the first part of their week. We're talking like, upper 60s and 70s in November. And I just had a memory come up on my Facebook timeline. This exact day last year, we had like 10 inches of snow on the ground. So yeah, it's been a little unseasonably warm, but the water's been great, and fresh fish are pushing in with each little push of water that we get, and it's keeping us busy.
Well, that's really neat. And so how does this slightly warmer temperature kind of affect fish behavior and how you target them?
Well, the warmer water is actually kind of a blessing for us in the fall because, the water temps are only going to go one direction in the fall, and that is south. They're going to get colder and colder and colder until things freeze up. The warmer the water stays, the more energetic the fish are. And in my opinion, the more fun they are to catch, because the warmer the water, the higher their metabolism and their willingness to chase flies, be it stripped or swung. And so it's really good in how it affects the water. But all good things come to an end, and we're back down in the 30s tonight, and I think a high of mid 40s tomorrow. So we're back down to our normal, mid-November temps. And so, yeah, it's we take what we can get.
Yeah, sounds like you'll be crunching ice on the edge of the water here pretty soon then.
Could be.
Yeah. So you're a super popular guy, Patrick. I mean, this is pretty impressive, right?
Hey.
More listener questions, and Eric reached out pretty much right after we released the last report, and he wanted to get some nymph recommendations for you for Ohio other than fishing eggs and boogers. And then kind of the add-on for that were, what are your suggestions for the best way to fish a run with an indicator setup?
Nymph recommendations. Well, there's a couple of things that come to mind, and this will sound like a plug, and I guess it is. So we'll make it a shameless plug. There's a couple of different flies that come to mind. One is if you want to call it a Steelhead Alley staple. This is one of Greg Signo's probably oldest fly patterns that's still commercially available, and it's called the Wiggle Stone. You can get those tied by people all over the country, but I do know that Orvis commercially sells them for Greg. And the Wiggle Stone is just a jointed stonefly nymph imitation. And you can't argue with the results that fly has put up year after year after year after year. And for those that know about it, they still fish it, and it still produces. And here's the thing about the stonefly. We've got here on the alley what a lot of people call little winter stones, especially in the springtime. You get them in the late fall, no doubt, but also in the springtime, almost every year. If you're stream side, when the ice is still on the banks and there's some fresh, late winter snow, you'll see these stoneflies hatching off. And sometimes you can look down on the snow and it's literally blanketed with little tiny black stoneflies. And on rare occasion, and I say rare occasion, I have actually seen steelhead feeding on the surface for those little stoneflies. At first, I doubted that that's what was going on, but I was actually able to confirm it one day in particular where the lighting was just right. So those little black stonefly nymphs are definitely something that you need to have in your box at all times. And then the other thing that I would have as far as nymphs are concerned is some kind of an attractor nymph pattern, or what I would call a dirty water a nymph. Now there's a nymph that I used to have commercially available through Orvis. They stopped selling it though, and it was called the Psychedelic Smurf Stone. And you can actually find that fly tying tutorial somewhere on our fly tying blog, I believe. And to the best of my recollection, that's steelheadalleyflytying.blogspot.com, I think, is where they could find that tutorial. And it's just a very bright, kind of has a fluorescent chartreuse base to it. It's a dirty water nymph. It's what I designed it for. We definitely get dirty water here. And a story to go along with that. It's always cool to hear stories about flies that you design. But I had a client come fish with me one time, and he told me that fly was all the rage out on the lower Sac in California. And I was like, what? I was totally surprised by it. He told me this crazy story, how he had a trip booked on the lower Sac, and the night before he was supposed to fish, it blew out. And showed up there the next day to fish, and they had 8 boats from the fly shop there in Redding on the water, and nobody was catching anything that day, including this guy. And he asked the guy, hey, mind if I try something I've got in my box? And he happened to have some of these Smurf stones in his box that he had tied up for back here on the alley. And he tied one of those on, and next thing you know, it's fish after fish after fish after fish. And the rest of the boats wanted to know what he was using, and the guide told him he was not allowed to share what he was catching them on, and he bought every one out of the client's box that day. I called the fly shop to see if this story was true, and sure enough it was. So it's a great dirty water nymph pattern. So there's 2. The Wiggle Stone, which is typically black with a kind of a blue thorax, blue abdomen, and then that Psychedelic Smurf Stone, which is kind of a chartreuse stonefly pattern with some striped wire body that's really good as an attractor pattern. So there's 2 to get them started. And as far as how to fish a run, well, the first thing is you got to know how to make a good drift, right? If you can't make a good drift, start there, because it doesn't matter how you approach a run. If you can't make a good drift, you're wasting your time. And trust me, there's a big difference between a good drift and a bad drift. Over 12 years of guiding clients, I can tell you that it oftentimes does come down to the skills of the angler. Assuming that you do have the ability for a good drift, the second thing that I would pay attention to are current conditions. Most people we're like any creature. We're creatures of habit, right? So oftentimes we approach a run, we do the same exact thing we did the last time. Why? Because it worked. Well, you can approach it the same way if the conditions are all the same. But if the conditions aren't all the same, then you need to be aware of how those conditions cause the habits of steelhead to change. So if you were there, say, late October, early November, water temperatures are warm, water temperatures are slightly elevated, and fish are pushing, you may have caught those fish up at the head of the run, right below the riffle, getting ready to push up to the next hole or the next section of river. And you show up the next time and it's early December and your water temperatures are, in the upper 30s, they've dropped 15, 20 degrees, and you're up there fishing the same exact spot and you're wondering why you're not catching any fish. It's because the fish aren't there, right? The fish, because of the cold water, have dropped back into the deepest cuts and the deepest parts of that hole. And so anytime you approach a run, you need to understand the current conditions, because that is what's going to dictate how you approach a hole. One size does not fit all when it comes to fishing for steelhead. You got to know the conditions and how those conditions have caused the habits of those fish to change, and that can change daily depending on what's going on. So I guess that would be the fastest and easiest response I can give to that question.
Yeah, that's super helpful. And to maybe put a little bit more meat on the bone for indicator fishing with a good drift, I always think about that the water on the bottom is slower than the water on top. So your indicator better be moving slower than the surface water. I don't know if you have a different way of telling people how to, watch their drift to make sure that they're actually down and in the zone.
I basically tell people, watch the bubbles and make sure your indicator is moving either in line with the bubbles or slower. That's the gauge. If you're moving faster than the bubbles, you're out of the zone. And that's pretty much how I explain it to the anglers. It's at times it can be easy to talk over the heads of clients. If you get too deep, they kind of go glossy-eyed on you, And so I basically just try and give them an indicator, a visual indicator that they can watch for, and shoot for that, and roll with it.
Very cool. And, folks, we love questions on the articulate fly. You can email them to us or shoot them to us on our Facebook or Instagram page. If we use your question, I'll send you some articulate fly swag, and you'll get it entered into a drawing for something cool from the guys at SAO at the end of the season. And before I let you hop, Patrick, why don't you let folks know where they can find you so they can fill out that guide calendar this season?
You can find us on the web at www.steelheadallyoutfitters.com, and you can reach me anytime via email at team, T as in Tom, E as in Edward, AM at steelheadallyoutfitters.com, or you can call us at 888-453-5899. And one last thing, we just had a last-minute cancellation come in for next Monday, November 23rd, with one of our season guides. And it's a hot date. It's the only date that we've got available, I believe, in the next week. So if you're looking for a day to get out, that day just became available. Give us a shout.
Yeah, there you go. And, folks, the next time we talk, we'll be on the other side of Thanksgiving. So I want all of you to have a safe and happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving, Patrick.
Thanks, Marvin. Have a great one.